Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some news for Nebraska in the personnel department as wide receiver Zavier Betts decides to leave the Nebraska Cornhuskers Football Program over the weekend, which begs the question, what wide receivers are going to be stepping up for this Nebraska team in 2023? And Matt Rhule already talked about this wide receiver room being a rather thin position group. And we're going to be talking about some guys who now need to step up for Nebraska in 2023. Now, before we get into it again, just want to say thank you to the Nebraska fans. You guys have shown a ton of support. This is one of my favorite programs to talk about. Massively high on what Matt Rhule can do in Lincoln. The support from you guys truly does mean a lot. So, one, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. The best part about doing this is just talking ball with you guys in the comment section. So, love to hear what wide receivers, what pass catchers you guys will think will be stepping up in 2023 for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, I want to get into now before we talk about players to step up. I want to highlight two things. One, you're seeing continually the culture changing at Nebraska, right? You had Miles Farmer leave the program. Now you have Zavier Betts leaving the program. I'm not saying it's good to have players leaving the program, but you are seeing like Matt Rhule is changing what's going on in this Nebraska locker room. And with this change comes guys being uncomfortable with the change. It's not what they're used to, and they decide to leave the program. But if you're a Nebraska fan, you're probably optimistic about the fact that as stuff is changing. The guys who are staying with this program, it's important that they are in it. Their hearts are in it. I think Matt Rhule even talked about that in his press conference. It's important to go into the season having guys bought in, having their hearts into this program. And quite frankly, if your heart's not in it, you don't want them in your program heading into the 2023 season. So wishing Miles Farmer, Zavier Betts the best. But you got to feel good about the guys heading into 2023 for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. The second thing I want to talk about, and more important, Garrett McGuire. Like, I just trust Garrett McGuire. He's a really young coach. I believe he's 24 years old, coaching the wide receiver room. If you guys watch the documentary, hey, look in, Nebraska's doing it for the fall camp. I've been keeping up with it. A really impressive young coach that I think if you're a Nebraska fan, you feel awesome about leading some of these young wide receivers into the 2023 season. Doesn't sound like there's a guy who works harder and for his young age, just really well spoken, like has a real command of this wide receiver room. So that gives you some more optimism that this wide receiver room, this pass catcher room is going to be okay. Now, I use the word pass catcher because in Coach Satterfield's offense, I mean, a lot of it goes through the tight end. You look back at where he's been, he utilizes tight ends in a big way. So although maybe you are a little thin at that wide receiver position, you also got to know that you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel. You're going to see a lot of two tight end sets. And this is probably one of the more talented rooms that Nebraska has, right? You have Nate Borkisher, who's also features in the documentary, which I absolutely love. I think you feel good about him. Thomas Fidone could truly be one of the, if you had to tell me there's going to be one college football player that just takes the college football world by storm, that would probably be my pick. You just look at him, you read about him coming out of high school, has all the traits. He's healthy. You're really excited about what he can bring. And then Eric Gilbert, you're still waiting on the waiver. But if he gets the waiver, I mean, you're looking at a tight end room that's going to use the tight ends a lot downfield in the passing game. And it's probably one of the most talented rooms in the whole entire country. So just the mere fact that you're going to use your tight ends, you have really talented tight ends, you probably feel pretty good about the pass catcher situation heading into 2023. But I do want to talk about the wide receivers and the guys who are going to be stepping up in 2023. And I'm going to start with my guy, Billy Kemp IV. If you guys have been listening to me all summer, like Billy Kemp is my guy. If you had to ask me who leads in receptions, who leads in receiving yards, who leads in probably receiving touchdowns as well, Billy Kemp's going to be my guy. I think he's going to be Jeff Sims' best friend in this offense. You're talking about a dude that he's not your prototypical wide receiver one because he's not 6 foot plus. He's not a big body that has burners. You talk about understanding the position. You talk about getting the job done. I think Billy Kemp is one of those guys across the country that is one of the most slept on wide receivers, right? He played at Virginia. When Virginia's offense was humming, a lot of that offense went through Billy Kemp. And when you need a third and four, and you need someone to create some separation and move the chains, like Billy Kemp is going to be that guy. And I truly think it sounds like from the documentary as well, he's kind of emerged as one of the leaders in this Nebraska offense, specifically in the wide receiver room. So Billy Kemp, I think, makes you have a baseline of, okay, we're going to have a guy that's going to get the job done, catch anything that throws his way, create separation. So you feel pretty good. And now you're talking about guys who are going to need to step up, right? No more Zavier Betts. The next guy I'm going to, and I'm sure Nebraska fans, if you've been listening to me over the last 6 months, even 12 months, I was kind of banging the table for this kid, Marcus Washington. The transfer from Texas, you talk about prototypical wide receiver one look to him. I mean, long, he's fast, the body control's there. Now it talks about you got to just stay healthy and you got to put it on the field. And if Marcus Washington can do that heading into his senior year, you're truly looking at a really dynamic duo in Marcus Washington and Billy Kemp, who do a lot of different things, which we talk about all the time is really important in that wide receiver room, right? A bigger boundary receiver in Marcus Washington, a smaller, shiftier slot receiver in Billy Kemp. That's a nice duo. And now you're talking about, okay, now we need guys to step up who haven't played much snaps for Nebraska. Some of them you haven't even seen wear a Nebraska helmet yet in a real football game, but you're going to need to ask them to kind of carry the load a little bit heading into 2023. The first guy I'm going to go to is Isaiah Garcia Castaneda. They call him IGC. Also a guy featured in that Nebraska documentary is a dude that I think is slowly coming along, and you're seeing him kind of slowly put it together in fall camp. Garrett McGuire, time and time again, says how much he trusts Isaiah Garcia Castaneda. I'm just going to call him IGC to kind of step up and be one of those guys. You got Billy Kemp, Marcus Washington, my third wide receiver, probably IGC heading into the season. And then it gets to guys that you haven't even seen wear a Nebraska helmet. But just because you have questions doesn't necessarily mean that is bad. It just means you have an unknown quantity. And we're going to start off with Malachi Coleman, the true freshman who you talk about physical traits. You talk about the athleticism to play year one at the Power 5 level. Malachi Coleman certainly checks that box, right? 6'4 plus. He looks really big. Looks like he had a phenomenal summer workout, right? He looks like 200 plus pounds. You obviously know the track speed that he has, just the raw athleticism that he has. The key with Malachi Coleman, I think Matt Rhule kind of touched on it in his press conferences. This is a guy that it's hard to play as a freshman. You got to learn the route trees. You got to learn the playbook. And Malachi Coleman's a guy that you go back to his high school days, he was playing a lot of defense. So a little bit more of a raw talent. But if he puts it together and gets the good grasp on this offense, knows how to create separation, knows how to run those route trees, I think you're talking about Malachi Coleman. We talked about Thomas Fidone kind of taking the college football world by storm. I think Malachi Coleman could be another guy that certainly takes the world by storm. And then you have Joshua Fleeks, who coming over from Baylor. He actually got sent home before fall camp because he came in overweight, but he's back with the program. A couple things with him, right? He's played a lot of football, right? A senior, he's played a lot of Baylor. Matt Rhule knows him from his time at Baylor. And then also the fact that he went home, got his body right, came back to the program, I think shows that he wants to be there. So it's a guy who's a veteran. He's played a lot of football. He knows Matt Rhule. He wants to be there. Joshua Fleek sounds like a guy that could be contributing for this Nebraska offense. And then you go to the true freshman. And it's a laundry list of guys. The guys I want to start talking about, and these are the guys that if you read the fall camp notes, these are the dudes that you've heard the most about. Jaden Doss, he's a really thick wide receiver. I believe he played running back, wide receiver at the high school ranks. He sounds like a guy that's getting a lot of buzz, even more buzz than Malachi Coleman, it sounds like, out of fall camp. So Jaden Doss, probably a guy that we're looking for to step up. And then I want to talk about Bryce Turner, another absolute speed demon, 6'2", 180 pounds, ran a 10.2 400-meter dash time. Now, it was wind-aided, but, I mean, that's a 10.2 That is one of the fastest times you'll see in the 100-meter. He's got a guy that speed translates early, and he has all the speed in the world. Demetrius Bell, another name that's getting kicked around. At the end of the day, for Nebraska, I get the concerns, right? Like, this was a position group that you probably didn't want to have a loss in, right? Zavier Betts was a guy that was going to play a lot for Nebraska, but there's a couple things that I think you're not really panicking for. One, the guys in this room, they want to be there. Their heart's in it. Two, Garrett McGuire, I trust him. I love his energy. I love what he's going to bring to this Nebraska wide receiver room, especially mentoring and coaching up some of this young talent. And then three, although there are question marks, you have a couple answers. I think Billy Kemp is a known commodity. Marcus Washington could be a massive answer to the Nebraska wide receiver room. IGC probably thrown in that too. And then you have a bunch of talented true freshmen. At that point, it's a numbers game, right? Whether it's Jaden Doss, whether it's Malachi Coleman, whether it's Bryce Turner, you feel good that one of those guys is going to step up. You combine that with the loaded tight end room. Yes, Xavier Betts and that loss hurts. You wish him the best. But the guys you have in this wide receiver room, I think you feel pretty good about in terms of upside, in terms of what they could be. I think you're even feeling a little bit better about it. So Nebraska's wide receiver room, yes, it's thin. Yes, we're looking for guys to step up, but there are a bunch of guys that could be stepping up for the Cornhuskers in 2023. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Would love to hear what wide receivers you think are going to be stepping up in 2023. And we'll talk some Nebraska football soon. Appreciate y'all, and we'll talk to you guys later.